Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, small chain of independent record shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm going to fix my camera really quick because it looks like I have some zooming issues going on. Thanks for joining. We are here today to talk about a new album from Pearl Jam. Something that doesn't happen all that often, and something that honestly I don't do a lot of it. In fact, you could go back through the channel. I don't do a lot of record reviews, not because it's not interesting to me. It's just honestly, there's a lot of places to get record reviews out there. And most times I don't quite feel qualified, I guess would be the word, maybe. But in this case, in the case of Pearl Jam, I do feel qualified. That's because this will be a very biased review from a lifelong fan. Um, if you're looking for one of those reaction reviews from someone who doesn't know the band, this is not the right place. If you're not a Pearl Jam fan, you obviously clicked on the wrong video, and you can probably keep moving along. If you're one of those Pearl Jam fans that you haven't listened to, and you haven't listened to the band in years, and they lost you in 1993, 94 after the first couple records, well, that's cool. That's not me. That's not a lot of fans. I don't know if this record, Dark Matter, is going to bring you back to becoming a fan. I don't necessarily think it's that type of record, although it could. It is really good. I'm going to give you my honest review of it. First and foremost, let's talk about how this album came about. It's their first album in a number of years. Their last record, Gigaton, came out right before the pandemic, or right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so that was recorded obviously prior to that. So getting these guys back into a room, which this album took place, they recorded it over the course of a year in two different sessions with a new producer, Andrew Watt, which they've never worked with before, which is very interesting. And there's a lot of discussion around his involvement. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but the starting point for this album for everybody was the title track, Dark Matter, which in my opinion, and I'll get into the track list, but I think from a lead single standpoint, Dark Matter is easily the strongest single they have come out with. Probably if I went all the way back to 2006 on the Avocado album, self-titled record, when they released Worldwide Suicide. That was a great lead-off single. You can go through the other singles from Lightning Bolt, from Backspacer, from Gigaton. I think we're fine, but nothing as strong as Dark Matter. So upon hearing the first single, that got me very excited as a Pearl Jam fan. And I know it got a lot of other people excited because very strong track, a heavy track, which is always nice. They tend to release their heavier songs first. They don't typically lead off with a more accessible single. They're not ones known to pick the best singles, but I think in this case, Dark Matter really was a great leadoff track. So that comes out. I will say I only listened to the lead single. I didn't listen to Running. That was released streaming next. And then I think they released Wreckage after that. So I held out. I only listened to Dark Matter first. So I did have a pretty, in this case, unbiased view of the whole album as a whole, because I'd only heard that lead single. But I think let's talk about art first. So artwork on the album, one of the things that I love about Pearl Jam, in addition to the music, is that they always put a lot into the artwork. I think the artwork is really unique, really cool. This is light art, as they call it. And throughout the entire package, there's a really cool representation. It comes with a booklet, which has lyrics and more light art contained inside. It also comes with a sticker sheet, which is really cool. I think these differ depending on which variant you got. I'll talk about those. So there were, I think, 12 different variants of the album. This is the 10 Club variant here, which is on like a red marble. There's also the Record Store Day version that came on I think they called this ghostly green. So there was 12 different ones released to different record stores regionally, which is kind of interesting. I'm sure plenty of people are collecting them all. I'll end up keeping one or two max, probably these two that I showed you. Most indie record stores that didn't get the regional variants just have black vinyl. So that's the only one I've been able to sell, which is totally fine. But so artwork, packaging. They also released a bunch of teasers in regards to um, kind of the app and holding it up. They've done that a lot of times. So there's always a lot of marketing done around what and when Pearl Jam releases an album because they only release an album every 3-4 years. So I don't blame them for kind of putting all the effort into the marketing and the packaging of an album. And it's one of the things I love about the band is they don't really cut corners when it comes to the records. They really do treat it like a work of art. So production, let's talk about this. Highly debated. So Andrew Watt got these guys in a room. From a recording standpoint, if you look at interviews, which there are plenty, the band's doing a lot of press right now. They just did Howard Stern. They've done a bunch of podcasts. They will tell you, the band will, that this is one of the first albums in a long time to where they got into a room and did not come in with any preconceived notions or song structures, which is very interesting. They literally got into a room and just said, "Hey, what do you got?" And they started out with a riff and they started jamming, and the songs came from there, which is really unique for them because they don't all live in the same cities. So typically, if you go back to previous couple albums and look at how they recorded those, it's typically sending demos around for months and even years, formulating songs and opinions and pieces, and then they come together and kind of bring it all together. So this was totally different. The fact that Andrew Watt got them all in a room to write and record in real time, I think is very important in regards to how this album played out. As far as the production itself, I don't mind it. There's a lot of people who are up in arms about the drum sounds, about the amount of compression, about how this album sounds. I have listened to these vinyl copies that I just showed you on my two different turntables. I've streamed it a bunch in my AirPods. I've listened to it in my car. I've listened to it while I've been exercising. I've listened to it endlessly over the last week since this came out. And I have zero issues with this album from a sound perspective. I think it hits really hard. I think it's really punchy. I think there's plenty of separation in the instruments especially when you get it in headphones. So that's my opinion. There are other people who are saying there's way too much compression on the drums and it doesn't sound right. It needs a remix and all this. All I can tell you is my personal opinion is I'm enjoying it and I'm enjoying the sound of it. So let's get into the actual track list of the record. And then I want to talk about where this fits in the discography. So that's the fun thing for me, being a lifelong fan. When a new album drops like this is the band's 12th full length album. I immediately, obviously, immerse myself in it because this has been a band that has been a huge part of my life since I was a 13-year-old kid. And I love getting a new record and figuring out not only the record itself and the songs, but where it fits in their discography. Like that's always the big thing for me is like, what does it remind me of from the past? What sounds completely fresh? And kind of where do I rank it for lack of a better term. So I do want to get into that, but from a track list perspective, again, I had only heard Dark Matter and I dropped the needle on this record. It took me, I would say, 4 or 5 full spins of the album before I really started to hear some things. Like, it's not an album, in my opinion, where you drop the needle and right off the bat, it's going to just grab you. It's a pretty dense album, even though they wrote it somewhat quickly and fluidly in during those 2 sessions with Andrew Watt. I think there's a lot here. I don't These guys aren't writing in for the most part, 3, 4 chord songs. There's a couple of those on here, but there's a lot going on from an instrumentation perspective. The first song, Scared of Fear, which they just performed on Howard Stern Live. It sounds fantastic live. I think it's a great kickoff. It's a little bit reminiscent to me of like Last Exit, as far as if I think of an intro track to an album, that was the first one I thought of going all the way back to Vitology in 94. Love the track. I think it's a great opener. Pretty classic Stone Gossard riff to start it off. Really kind of unique, great drums throughout. Um, Again, Good lead off track, excited to hear it live, and that one's definitely growing on me. Again, I didn't drop the needle on it and immediately just be I wasn't blown away from the intro track, but the more and more I listen to it, I'm appreciating it more and more. React and Respond is the second track, and this one did kind of get me right away. This is a Jeff Ament track, which it's definitely got kind of a punk vibe to it. Undoubtedly, it reminds me a little bit of the song "Whipping," which is also Vitology, I believe. Just in certain parts of it, I think it's got a little melody that is reminiscent of that. The riff here, which I suspect is a Jeff Ament riff, is probably one of my favorites, if not my favorites, on the album. And the rapid fire vocals are really unique for Ed. I don't hear that in a lot of their previous work. There's a few songs here and there I could point to, but I think the 1-2 punch of Scared of Fear and React Respond is a great way to kick off the album. So by this point, I'm really intrigued on that first listen, going, what is next? Then they drop into Wreckage, which again, I hadn't heard yet. This is very much a little bit of a vibe break from those first two heavy hitters. You get into more of a kind of a Tom Petty vibe here. Reminds me a little bit of the song Light Years from Binaural from a vibe perspective only. And honestly, like this song Wreckage for most bands probably would have been the lead single, I think in most cases, but Pearl Jam isn't most bands, so they came out with a much heavier track with the title track. But I love Wreckage. I would kind of be shocked if they don't push this one. Not that singles really mean much these days. It's all available via streaming, or if you have the record, you're spinning the whole thing. But from a promotional standpoint, I would think Wreckage is something they'll probably follow on. It was kind of pre-released, I think, just like a day or two before the album dropped, but definitely a highlight. I love the harmonies on Wreckage. I think that's something we haven't heard a lot of from Pearl Jam in the past, so that's really cool. The lead track, talked about this one already. I really do think it's probably the best lead single since Worldwide Suicide. This was with the drum intro, all based off of Matt Cameron. The band had said that he played that drum loop, and they immediately all perked up and recorded a loop of it, and took it home and kind of wrote these riffs and brought them in and pieced it together. Fantastic performance across the board. Really, really great track, and I think that one's going to shine live. I can't wait to hear it live. I was really hoping they were going to play Dark Matter on the Stern during the Stern interview, but they played Scared of Fear and Running instead. So after Dark Matter, they drop into Won't Tell, which is a song I'm still kind of trying to figure out. I love the chorus harmonies of it. It's got a little bit of a reminiscent of the song Smile from No Code as far as the kind of gallop in the verses, which is cool. And then honestly, during the choruses, I hear there's a little bit of the guitar portion. I don't know if it's Stone or if it's Mike. It's almost got a Coldplay type of vibe. Like there's a little bit of that in there, in a good way. So Won't Tell is one of those kind of mid-tempo, will probably end up being more of an album cut. If I had to say, I'll be surprised if it gets a lot of play during the live set. And that's what you have to keep in mind here too, is for a Pearl Jam fan like me, all of these songs come out. Not only am I trying to figure out where this album fits in the discography, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do we think they're going to play live? You know, I actually don't have tickets to see them live on this tour, but I'll still be following it. And it'll be really interesting to see which of these tracks fit into the live set and where they fit in. Is there going to be, what's going to open the show? They typically always open with something from the new album. So I'll be very interested to see what they choose to open it, what makes it into like the encore, and then which songs don't get hardly played at all. There will definitely be some songs from this record I would suspect will only get played a handful of times. So we shall see. That's always a big one for Pearl Jam fans is how the new album incorporates into the live show, especially since the band's not playing massive 30 plus song shows anymore. Their shows are now more 20, 25 songs, versus, if you go back several tours pre-COVID, they were playing these long shows, which they're not doing anymore. So that is side A, Scared of Fear, React Respond, Wreckage, Dark Matter, Won't Tell. Side B, and I think this is where the album, I think, really starts to shine. When you flip the record over and you get to Upper Hand, this is where I was like, okay, we're getting into something here. the kind of Pink Floyd feel, for lack of a better term, of this song as it starts out, really opened my eyes, and I was like, "Man, this is interesting." I love the chorus melody. I love the delivery of the vocals. I'll be curious if Pearl Jam goes the direction they have a trilogy where they'll play Better Man, Leatherman, Nothing Man, and I'm curious if they'll do Sleight of Hand, Severed Hand, and Upper Hand because now they'll have a hand trio. I guess when you got 12 albums, that ends up being the case. So you can come up with themes just off your song titles alone. But Upper Hand is a highlight of this album. I would say right now, currently, probably my favorite track, along with the next one, which is Waiting for Stevie. So this is the track on the album that I think most people are gravitating towards, and I completely understand it. It's again Upper Hand and this track, Waiting for Stevie, are the highlights in a big way. Stevie harkens back, I think, to the earliest Pearl Jam. If you want to try and get there, if you're one of those who's like, "Oh, I wish they'd go back to the early days," I get it. This song has a tinge of that. It's a really great hook from the beginning. I believe it was Eddie and Andrew Watt came together on the initial riff. It sounds like a Stone riff, honestly. It could be because I think of In Hiding, I think of Breath, I even think a little bit when you get into the chorus of this song, like a Given to Fly type vibe. So I love that. The outro on this song is going to be epic live. It turns into a huge jam. Mike McCready is highlighted all over this album. That's one of the things Andrew Watt said is he really wanted McCready to just go nuts. And there's a couple tracks, this one specifically on the outro, where he does, and I would be shocked live if it doesn't turn into an extended jam. And then there's a segue after Waiting for Stevie, which goes on for about a minute, which is really kind of nice palate cleanser and reminds me of some of the segues and interesting stuff they used to do on like Vitology again. So I think there are elements of this album where they're kind of harkening back, and that's again what Andrew Watt kind of has alluded to that he wanted to do. He wanted to hear as a producer and as a fan. He's been a lifelong fan as well. So I think there's a ton of stuff that you can grasp onto and go, "Oh, yeah, I can hear the evolution from the early days." So side B starting off with Upper Hand and Stevie, I think that's the highlight of the album for me. Those two tracks right now, as it currently stands, just absolutely beautiful from a songwriting perspective. I love those two tracks and cannot get enough of them right now. Then they go into Running, which Running is it's supersonic. It's Spin the Black Circle. It's Mind Your Manners. It is absolutely one of those songs. There's almost always one or two of them. React, Respond is kind of in the same vein where it's very up tempo. It's very punk rock from an influence standpoint. High tempo. Matt Cameron's drums are just off the charts on this song. Listen to the fills, especially towards the outro of the song. He is really killing it. I suspect Running will be in the set list, especially since they played it live on Stern. I imagine that's going to be a song that's probably early in the set. I think back to the Lightning Bolt tour, Mind Your Manners is one of those songs similar to where they will get into that pretty quickly. Something Special. This is obviously an Ed song. This one, along with I would say Won't Tell and the next track Gotta Give, are kind of the mid-tempo songs. Something Special is a really unique message. It's very cut and dry, and it feels cut and dry to me. It feels direct and to the point that this is a song that Ed's writing about, his kids, specifically one of his daughters, probably. But you can put yourself, if you're a parent, you can certainly put yourself into this song and find a lot of joy in it because it is a pretty special one. So that's a cool song. Got to Give, again, another album track. I'm digging it. I haven't latched onto it as much as some of the other tracks, but it is a really good one along with Won't Tell and Got to Give. And then again, Something Special are kind of the ones where it's like, I feel like those are going to be relegated to not getting as much play live, but that's just my guess. We'll see what happens. And then they end the album with a song called Setting Sun, which is a really cool track, a really cool kind of percussive backing track from Cameron. And the band's known for really strong closers on their records. If you go back all the way to Release and Indifference, but even Parting Ways, Inside Job. What's the track at the end of Riot Act? I always forget the name of that one, but that's a fantastic track as well. Setting Suns, I think in that direction. I think it'll become one of those. I can foresee this one getting played live a lot, maybe in the encore even. It's got a great crescendo at the end and a great lyric at the end to kind of wrap up the album. So all in all, as a Pearl Jam complete fanboy, I'm excited. I'm super excited that the band is still at it, that they are putting out music. If you're not a fan of the band, is this album going to convince you to get on the Pearl Jam bandwagon? I don't think so. That's not what they're in this for. They're not right. I don't, in my opinion, they're writing songs for their fan base. If new people come on board, I think that's probably a bonus to them. It would seem that way to me. But I would find it hard to believe if you're a Pearl Jam fan, and let's describe fan. If you know 10 and maybe you know Verses and some of that early stuff, and you haven't listened to anything in 30 years, I don't know if I describe you as a fan. You probably like a couple albums. I've got plenty of albums on my shelf where, I like one or two albums. I don't have the discography, so I'm not necessarily a fan of the band. I'm a fan of a couple albums. There's plenty of people who are a fan of Pearl Jam's first or one or two records. But if you're a fan for the long haul, if you've been in this thing for the most part for the last 30 plus years, I would be kind of shocked if you don't find something in this album that you really like. Because if you're a fan of great drum riffs from Cameron, great melodies from Ed, really nice guitar play, and interesting song structures too. There's some interesting pieces in here. There's some simplistic songs, but there's also some really intricate work, which is really cool. So again, I'd be shocked if you're a Pearl Jam fan on some level that you wouldn't find some joy in this record. I know I have. So where does it fit? Where does this album fit for me in their catalog? There's been a ton of people who are posting this online trying to, basically say where Dark Matter fits, which, let's be honest, the album's been out a week. It's going to take longer than that. Like, at least it does for me. I can't really settle in and be like, oh, this album's better than that album after only listening to a week. It's really hard to compare. People try and compare this album to albums from 10, 20, 30 years ago. You've got history with those albums. You've got memories tied to those albums. You have all the nostalgia built into those albums. And that all plays into kind of where you put them. And so after a week, it's really hard, but I'll do it anyways. For me, this is the band's best record, certainly since Avocado, their self-titled record. So if you look at Gigaton, you look at Lightning Bolt, you look at Backspacer, the songs here are stronger as a whole than those three albums, undoubtedly. Then you take Avocado in 2006, which I think is a really great album. Songs like Marker in the Sand, songs like Inside Job, some fantastic songs that I absolutely love. Um, this is rivaling that one for me. After a week, I can't necessarily put it above that one because I love that record and I loved that tour. But it's on par with that. And honestly, as this grows, I could foresee me liking this album more than Avocado, maybe even as much or more than Riot Act and Binaural. Like, I can look at the discography and I could see this album coming out after Yield and really being happy about it. And that's very strange. I could not say that with any of their last couple releases. I like all of their I like everything Pearl Jam's put out. Like, really I can find highlights in all of their albums. Like, holistically, is one album better than the next? No, it doesn't compound like that over the course of a 35-year career. But if I'm going to place Dark Matter within their catalog after a week, like I said, I'm putting in there with Avocado as the best thing they put out since then, and maybe even going back a little further to the Yield period. I think there's a lot reminiscent of this album in the Yield period as far as the style of the songwriting, and that really, really excites me. Everyone that's going to get to hear these songs live on the upcoming tour, very envious. Still trying to figure out if maybe I can make it, but it doesn't seem likely. But I'm just thankful the band's still putting out music. I'm thankful that there there's definitely a conversation around bands who have been around this long. Is like, why are they bothering to put out new music? Nobody cares. I think that's complete BS. There are fans that care. There are people just like me who are clamoring to hear what these guys are up to, even though they're in their 60s now. Like that doesn't I don't discount them as musicians in any way because of their age. They're totally different people than they were when they were, kids. Just like I'm a totally different person than I was when I was a kid when I first heard them. So they've evolved, they've changed, and I think this is a fantastic representation of who they are as musicians. And I'm excited to still be in a world where they are producing music. Like that's the legit truth, because you never know how many more albums you're going to get. You never know how many more times you're going to see these guys live. So just be thankful that you still got them. Whether this is whatever your favorite band is, if they're still out there touring, if they're still out there making music, just take advantage of it while you can, because you never know how many more albums you're going to get. If this was Pearl Jam's last record, I think they went out on a high. I don't think it is their last record, but I can tell you, I'm very happy with where it sits after a week. And I know a lot of other fans. It's very divisive. Some fans are all in like me, and some fans want nothing to do with it and just say it sounds terrible. And but that's opinions and that's music, that's what it's about. So for me, it's a great record, and I'm excited to continue to live with it and figure out where it fits in the discography even more specifically, and super excited to see how Ed weaves these songs into the set list and which songs make the cut and which songs become staples, if any. Like there's a lot of tracks, like I don't think we'll hear a lot of the Gigaton tracks. We don't hear much from Backspacer and Lightning Bolt in the current tour because it's hard to get these. There's only so many songs to fit in a set list. So it'll be interesting to see which of these stick for this tour and beyond. There's some songs in here like I feel have legs to them, and that could really, really make an impact on the set list for years to come. So we shall see. So that's my take on Pearl Jam's Dark Matter. A lot of people have asked for my take, which is why I did this, and I appreciate that. And I'm honored that anyone would give a shit, honestly, what I care about a Pearl Jam record. But there you go. I'm going to keep listening to it. If you're enjoying it, keep spinning it, keep living with it. And if you're lucky enough to see them on the tour, enjoy it. My name is G.I. Sanders. This has been another episode of Talking About Records, and we will see you again next time.